Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask you to please settle down so that we can commence with our program for the evening. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the annual Mahatma Gandhi International Awards for Reconciliation and Peace, and also the Satyagraha Awards. My name is Satish Dupilia, and I'm going to be your program director for the evening. We'd like to start off with the national anthem, so I'm going to ask you, after having asked you all to settle down, I'm going to ask you to all please rise for the national anthem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank Malibonge, Mdeni, and Kumbulani for that rendition of the national anthem, and also Anthony Joseph and his accompanying musician for the background music track. We are going to immediately, having started off with the national anthem, we are going to ask for some blessings so that our proceedings are going to be in order. And in order to do that, we are going to ask members of the WCRP, that's the World Council for Religion and Peace, to please come up on stage and lead us into a multi-faith prayer. The following people, members of the WCRP, are going to be leading us into prayer. They are Preacher Musa Komo, Ms. Patty Meskin, Sheikh Salim Banda, Pandit Raj Bharat, Reverend Jenny Sprong, Ven Gerald Vedden, and Parvez Khalili.
In the name of Almighty God, the most gracious, the most kind, we the people come in prayer to the source of all justice, truth and peace on behalf of our cities, our nation, our world.
We ask you, help us to accept the challenge of AIDS, to protect the healthy and calm the fearful, to give courage to those in pain, to embrace the dying and comfort the bereaved, to care for the orphans and support those in need. Unite us in your love and free us from fear.
Make us instruments of your peace. Where there's ignorance and suspicion, let there be enlightenment and knowledge. Where there's prejudice and hatred, let there be acceptance and love. Where there's fear and suspicion, let there be confidence and trust.
Where there is tyranny and oppression, let there be freedom and justice. Where there is poverty and disease, let there be prosperity and health. Where there is strife and discord, let there be harmony and peace.
Our world is sustained by three things: justice, truth, and peace. May we, by our thoughts, work, and deeds, hasten the time when wrong and violence shall cease, that there may be justice in the land, truth amongst all its people, and peace established throughout the earth.
Today, we celebrate and honor a political activist, Aung San Suu Kyi. We not only celebrate her contributions to political freedom, we celebrate her hope, aspirations, dreams, and achievements for her country, Burma, and the rest of the world. Aung San is a fearless freedom activist, and we need to give support to her work for political freedom and justice.
Anger is an expression of inner pain, an indication that all is not well in our world. It is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions. Whether it seeps out in the form of irritation or resentment, or explodes in full rage, it causes damage to ourselves and to others. Anger also has many subtle faces which influence our behavior and our relationships. May the perpetrator of the violence hear our prayer. May peace prevail on earth.
Thank you very much to the members of the WCRP. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I've always said about South Africa is that it represents to me a beautiful canvas, like an artist's canvas. And then when you take all the fantastic people of our land and put them together, you get a really colorful picture. And when I look at all of you fantastic people sitting down in this hall, I think we've got a beautiful canvas over here. So I think you need to give yourselves a round of applause because I see you decked out so beautifully and looking so good today. If we were going to shoot a movie, this is where we should start because we've got lots of film stars here. The awards evening is about normal people like you and I who have risen to icon status because of their commitment to peace, nonviolence, and the cause of justice. The Mahatma Gandhi International Award for Reconciliation and Peace was created in 2003, which was the centenary of the first Gandhi newspaper, the Indian Opinion. In 2006, the Satyagraha Awards were created to honor people from South Africa who have played an important role in the history of our country. And these were created in 2006 to celebrate the centenary of Satyagraha. Our very own revered leader, Nelson Mandela, was last year a recipient of the International Award for Reconciliation and Peace. On the 18th of July this year, which is not too many days ago, the world got together, and this is the entire world got together, and celebrated Madiba's birthday in a manner that pays tribute to his commitment to peace, justice, and democracy. The life story of such great people, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and many of our recipients, should inspire our youth and other people and be a beacon of hope in the troubled times in today's world. And will be proof that no matter what, ultimately, truth, peace, and nonviolence always triumph. Now, we have a number of important dignitaries over here today, And in order to welcome you in the proper manner, I'm going to ask our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Logi Naidu, to please come up and do the official welcome to you.
It is my pleasant task to welcome one and all of you to this function of the Gandhi Development Trust, the Gandhi International Peace Prize that will be conferred tonight at this wonderful setting, this august gathering. And I know that once I've done my duty, all others would come and say, all protocol observed. But nonetheless, it gives me great pleasure to welcome, and I was told by a Constitutional Court judge today not to breach protocol. So I'm going to start by saying, Honorable Judge of the Constitutional Court, Judge Zach Yakub, the Honorable Minister of Finance in our national government, Praveen Gordhan, a son of Etegweni, and someone we're very proud of. I think he deserves a round of applause. Now remember, he's going to be giving us money, so we've got to clap loud enough and make him feel comfortable. And KwaZulu-Natal is going to get a really large chunk of the national fiscus now that we have a son of the soil in national government. Well, we are going to be joined by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Relations, Ibrahim Ismail Ibrahim. He's on a flight to Durban, and he will join us later. The Honorable Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, well-known figure in KwaZulu-Natal and eThekwini, and who in April this year took office for the first time as Premier of KZN. Present also is our newly appointed MEC for Human Settlements, for Housing and Other Matters, MEC from Durban, eThekwini, Maggie Govender. Ila Gandhi, granddaughter of the great Mahatma and members of the Gandhi Development Trust. Our very special guests who are here tonight. Dr. Sein Win, representing the symbol of freedom in Burma, Madam Aung San Suu Kyi. Dr. Sein Win here representing the pro-democracy movement in Burma today. My colleagues who are present here, Mayor Yusuf Bamji and Mayor Zanele Hlatwayo from Msunduzi and Gungunjlovo district, other mayors and councillors who are present, the Consul General of the USA, Ms. Jill Derridian, who is here with us today. Welcome to you, Jill. To the awardees, to Dr. Albertina Lutuli and members of the Lutuli family, a very warm welcome to you. Mr. Paul David, long-standing freedom fighter and leader of the Congress movement. Mr. Richard Steele, who has been a man of peace for many years and has been a symbol of opposition to conscription in South Africa. To the family members of the late Koenig Ndlovu, our freedom fighter from KwaMashu in eThekwini, to Ms. Rajas Pillay, who is present and who you'll hear about a little later when the awards are conferred on them, and Mr. Hanif Bamji, who has come from Wales to receive this award, who's been in exile for many years, and who's from the Bamji family in Pietermaritzburg, a freedom fighter and a stalwart of our struggle. To the members of the World Council on Religion and Peace, and other religious leaders who are present, to many of our distinguished guests who are here. I have seen Mr. Mewa Ram Goben, I've seen Mr. Hasim Sidat, I've seen Farooq Mir, I've seen Dr. Jairam Reddy, and many other leading personalities from KwaZulu-Natal. The members of the Gandhi Development Trust, Ila Gandhi, Vasu Gaundan, Paddy Carney, who are here today and who put this function together. To all the peace activists who are here, members of the media, representatives of academia, I did see the Vice Chancellor of the DUT, and other representatives of our tertiary institutions were here. To all of you, I want to say a very warm welcome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for making this a wonderful and a glorious event. Tonight we celebrate those who have walked in the footsteps of Gandhiji, those who have given up their time and energy to strive for peace. Tonight the spotlight will be on Burma and the lack of civil liberties and the oppression that's taking place by a military junta. Today, the people of South Africa must send a message of hope that our brothers and sisters who continue to struggle throughout the world, that one day they'll all be free, like the people of South Africa who today celebrate their freedom. Thank you very much for being here, and do enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much to our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Logan Naidu. We enjoy a healthy and fruitful association with the eThekwini City Council, and we'd like to say thank you very much to them. Our next item is a dance by the talented Verushka Pata. This dance is going to be done to a favorite hymn of Gandhiji's, and to explain more to you about this dance, we will invite Beena Jagjeevan and Verushka Pata to come up on stage.
Verushka Pata is the artistic director of Natya Ananda and a senior disciple of the world-renowned dancing couple, the Dhananjayans of Chennai, India. She has the honor of being the recipient of a fellowship from the Indian Council for Cultural Relations of New Delhi. We are honored to be part of the Gandhi Peace Awards. Vaishnava Janato. Mahatma Gandhi was a beacon of light, a great humanitarian who tried to install the human values of truth, right living, peace, love, and nonviolence. In this, his favorite bhajan, the poet entreats us to think critically about what it means to be a true spiritual aspirant. It questions whether we are drowning in our own delusions of wealth, lust, social class, and good looks. The poet questions us again and again in this poem. Who is a truly virtuous human being? Is it someone who hides behind an accumulation of wealth? Is it someone who disregards others when they are in need? Is it someone who sees divisions between a Saivite and a Vaishnavite? No, 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 the poet implores us. A true Vaishnavite views everyone as equal. A true Vaishnavite is constantly striving to be pure like the waters of the holy Ganges. A true Vaishnavite is one whose thought, word, and actions are in harmony. A true Vaishnavite is one who feels the pain of others. Many speak of what it is to be a true Vaishnava, but it is only once you have experienced pain and suffering are you able to see and experience the values of a true Vaishnava and God.
I do dimly perceive that while everything around me is ever changing, ever dying, there is underlying all that change a living power that is changeless, that holds all together, that creates, dissolves, and recreates. That informing power or spirit is God. For I can see that in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence I gather that God is life, truth, light. Faith transcends reason.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान न आने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे सकल लोकमा सौने वंदे निंदा न करे केड़ी रे पाँच काछ मन निश्चल राखे वाच काछ मन निश्चल राखे धन धन जननी तेणी रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी परस्त्री जेने मात रे जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले पर धन नव झारे हाथ रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे व्यापेन कीजेने दृढ़ वैराग्य जेना मन मारे राम नामुषु ताळिरे रागी राम नामुषु ताळिले रागी सकड तीरथ तेना तन मारे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वर्ण लोभी ने कपट रहित छे काम क्रोध निवर्या रे भणे नर संयोतेनु दर्शन करता भणे नर संयोतेनु दर्शन करता कोलये को तिरुतार्य रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने रे कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे।
Thank you very much, Varushka, and also to Bina Jagjeevan for that translation. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to go into the first part of the awards ceremony for the evening, and I'm going to call upon Maggie Govender. Maggie is also, and we're very proud to say this, been appointed MEC for Public Works. She's a long-standing member of Satyagraha and ICON, and on behalf of the Trust, we'd like to congratulate her on her appointment, and we're going to ask her to give us a short background on the Satyagraha Awards.
Good evening, everyone. Seeing that our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Logi Naidu, has so aptly observed all protocol, I'll just take the easy way out and say all protocol observed. The Satyagraha Awards are awarded to people who have given outstanding service to their community and to the country as a whole. We in Satyagraha felt that it was necessary to acknowledge many people who would otherwise not be acknowledged, but who have made a great contribution towards the achievement of liberation in our country, who have made achievements towards building communities, who have contributed towards reconciliation and building a better South Africa. As Satyagraha, the organization, we are founded on Gandhian principles. We support sustainable development, and we use a multimedia approach. So you will find that we have a newspaper which caters for and covers a variety of topics, as well as a wide audience. Recently, we have reviewed our approach in terms of the newspaper and have used a more targeted approach, particularly towards young people, because we feel that that is where we need to start in order to build a society that we all want, founded on principles where conflict is resolved through non-violent means. We have developed close relationships with educators in schools, who give us feedback from their lessons and from their learners about what it is that affects young people. But the newspaper also covers a broader range of issues as well, ranging from the international to national to local. We are calling on people to volunteer to assist us in distributing this newspaper. We have also produced DVDs and a variety of other media which can be used and are being used in schoolrooms, within organizations, to help build the project of nonviolence in our society and towards building a society based on the values that Gandhi stood for. So we are calling for volunteers. And these awards then go to people who have made this kind of contribution. But I'm not going to be spending too much time talking about that. I'm actually going to be calling on somebody who himself embodies the spirit of volunteerism and who has contributed to our country and to the building of our nation, who will speak on that to you. It gives me great pleasure to call upon somebody who has certainly influenced my life to a great extent and the lives of many people here today. I'm going to call upon him right now, our Minister, our National Minister of Finance, Mr. Praveen Gordhan.
Sanbonani, good evening, namaste, vanakam, and thank you very much for this invitation to be with you this evening. I didn't realize that City Hall could still take so many people. So it's a great pleasure to be on my home turf since getting this appointment from President Zuma. And as you can see, the pressures are already on from people like Logi Naidu. They want more money. Now, I have to go back to my old role and remind Logi that if you want more money, then he'll have to go table to table and see if he can get more people to pay more tax. So how many volunteers do we have for that? Volunteerism has been a very important part of our history. We've just forgotten it for the last 15 years. It's through volunteers going back to the 19th century that the wars of resistance against British colonialism were fought by people to the north of Durban. It's through volunteerism that Mahatma Gandhi started his Satyagraha movement and passive resistance campaigns in South Africa. It's through volunteerism that Bambata had his rebellion in 1906. It just happened to be against tax. So don't get any ideas, please. Volunteerism has been a very important part of people like Josiah Gumere initiating their role in both the Communist Party and in the African National Congress. And generations of people from each of our communities represented here today who've made an invaluable contribution to building up resistance against unjust laws, against an evil system, and above all, against economic inequality. I'm just one of many generations of people who've taken up the cudgels of volunteerism. But what does volunteerism really mean? It means that you don't expect any reward, you don't expect any pay, you don't expect to get some money into your pockets as a result of the contributions that you make. And as all of our religions would say, you don't work in anticipation of that reward. It's a spirit, again, that is seriously lacking today. And clearly at a time when human society is facing formidable challenges, at a time when it thought that it had arrived at an economic model which would not collapse, an economic model that would not have booms and busts, where everybody ultimately will be provided for, and which economic model is about to collapse as a result of the greed and short-sightedness and risk-taking that we've seen originating from a city called New York and a street called Wall Street. We see devastation around the world. It's said that many of the rich people in South Africa and elsewhere have lost some of the capital that they've accumulated. But if you look all around the world, it's the least advantaged people, it's working people, it's the unemployed people, It's the poor people who face the worst in terms of the impact of this economic disaster. So America today symbolizes two things for us. The worst of capitalism on the one hand, as they try to rebuild it in a form that nobody quite knows what it would look like. And at the same time, when we look at President Obama's campaign, volunteerism on a massive scale of 30, 35-year-olds who said, I'll give up what I have, I'll give up my professional life for a while, I'll join the Obama campaign. I don't even know whether he will win. And many of them have ended up back in their old jobs or playing a new kind of role, but having activated millions of young people and inspired a society way beyond anything that anybody would have imagined. I had the good fortune of meeting one of these volunteers last Tuesday at a meeting in Abuja in Nigeria. He now sits in the Treasury of the United States, and he's about a 35-year-old young man, and who explained to me how he became involved. He was a political scientist and an economist, gave up his job, joined the campaign, and today works for the White House. But also explained the immense energy that you can unleash if you can get a social movement going, as we did in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 50s, and in the 60s. If the cause is right, if the leadership has integrity, and if its ethical standards are right, and if they act as symbols that people can look up to, but also symbols that they can actually respect. And I suppose in South Africa today, that's one of the things that we need. When we honor people like Koenig Ndlovu, Rajas Pillay, Albertina Lutuli, Aung San Suu Kyi, what are we saying? That we are honoring people who've made sacrifices, we are honoring people who've gained our respect as a result of the kind of contributions that they've made. But that is not enough. What is required in South Africa today is that generation of the 25-year-olds to 35-year-olds who have professional skills, who've been educated and might not be educated either, but who are willing to give up their time, their energy, and make a commitment to making South Africa a better place. The challenges that we face as South Africa are formidable, but equally, the potential that we have as South Africa is equally formidable. And it's our generation, the 2 or 3 generations that are represented in this hall, if you like, who have the responsibility today to cast a foundation of a new type for South Africa 20 years hence, and make sure that we make decisions today which will hold us in good stead, not just today, but 20 years hence. Some of us will tend to be short-sighted. Some of us are going to look for immediate gains. Some of us are going to see where the next tender is going to come from. And some of us are going to go out of our way to be politically correct, if you like. But if all of us do that, and if all of us fall for that trap, and if we don't have that volunteer core to remind us of what it means to work with integrity, what does it mean to have ethics in a democratic society, and what does it mean to give rise to a new set of leaders who have no ties to either the business world or the political world, but whose only commitment is to ensure that the kind of values that we and others have fought for are the kind of values that we will continue to strive to achieve in our society. And I suppose the challenge of volunteerism and the kind of challenge that the Satyagraha organization is posing to all of us is, what are we going to do, what are we going to offer in order to create this new battalion of resistors, if you like, but resistors who have an eye to how do we lay the foundation for the next 20 years. So I trust that you accept that invitation from the Satyagraha organization and apply your minds to how we could do things differently in a society that has a lot of potential to actually do so. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our Minister of Finance, Mr. Praveen Gordhan. I think he's about the only person who got people to volunteer to pay taxes. He did a very good job of it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to screen a DVD that is made by Sudha, and a DVD consists of information about the awardees of the Satyagraha Awards. So we'd like you to direct your attention to the screens, please.
Gandhiji said, "It should be obvious that civil resistance cannot flourish in an atmosphere of violence. This does not mean that the resources of a Satyagrahi have come to an end. Ways other than civil disobedience should be found out." In South Africa, once defined by struggle and oppression, the battle against apartheid was fought on many fronts. The repressive laws of the apartheid government meant that most meetings and organizations were placed under intense scrutiny, making organizing against the regime a nearly impossible task. Tonight, the Gdt Development Trust salutes our heroes who helped build a new South Africa.
I was about 11 years old when I saw a black woman being stabbed in the streets. And I got to a telephone and dialed the emergency. And the guy answering the phone said, "Is the woman white or black?" And I was just a kid, and I said, "Well, it's a black woman." And it took several hours for any response. In the end, she was just picked up like a sack of potatoes and chucked into the back of a van. I assume she died. It still stands out in my mind as one of those factors that impressed upon me that something needs to be done about this.
It demonstrated to me the sort of the contrast or the contradiction of my upbringing, my values, and even the teachings from my church background, was essentially love one another and do good. And here I could see a major section of the South African community saying this: listen, we're not experiencing love, we're not being done good to. You know, there's a contradiction here, and the system doesn't match the values which I hold. Therefore, I need to find ways of demonstrating my objection.
During the violent times of the apartheid regime, people were imprisoned, restricted, and tortured. A more innovative approach had to be implemented if the struggle for democracy was to forge ahead. Sport has always played a significant part in a typical South African's daily life. In this front, Paul David played a pivotal role in the fight against apartheid. By conscientizing and mobilizing the masses of sports enthusiasts, he remained intrinsically and personally involved in soccer and cricket.
Sport was very important in the lives of black people in our country, because there was nothing else to do. We had very few diversions when we were kids, so sport became very important to us.
We used to argue that it was not us who brought politics into sport, it was the South African government that brought politics into sport. If we take, for example, the question of rugby, which, as everyone knows, is sacrosanct in Wales, the South African government made it such that over 85% of rugby pitches in South Africa were for whites only.
The sport in political circles was demarcated a role, and who would be the persons to give sport that direction? Well, I was asked to actually help in that whole process.
After the banning of political organizations in the country, many went into exile. There, amongst other things, powerful anti-apartheid movements were formed. These movements were a crucial and important front in the fight against apartheid in South Africa.
We began to realize that something more needs to be done.
By the time I was 30, I concurred with the line that the ANC had taken many years ago under Mandela in '61, that it was only after the failure of peaceful means that they resorted to armed struggle.
Prior to this, of course, we've been giving out leaflets through the youth movement in South Africa, but now people are saying that much more militant action is required.
The harassment that he suffered at the hands of the security branch, I think as part of our activities as a student grouping, Youth Congress, there were pamphlets that were distributed in school. There was a strike that we led at the high school that we were part of in 62, 63. I think it was a combination of all of that. Things were becoming a bit too hot.
Well, I was arrested and held for 6 hours. I stood for most of that time, which is a painful exercise because standing for 6 hours in one spot is not easy. I got a bit frightened and worried. I was also concerned about the fact that they were discussing things in Afrikaans, which they didn't realize I spoke very fluently at the time, where they were thinking of beating up one of the other 2 people who had been arrested.
It was just security branch harassment all the time, and they took away my passport because they were scared I'd join the anti-apartheid movement on the outside.
And his involvement in the initial stages with the anti-apartheid movement, with the ANC in London, the defense, international defense and aid was constantly there. And he continued with the work that he would have done in South Africa, but on an international level.
The End Conscription campaign, another front on apartheid's battlefield, emanated from within the white community. A diverse group of organizations and individuals were mobilized in opposition to the conscription of young white males, forced to fight in an unjust apartheid war.
We recognized that this government depended particularly on white cooperation. And therefore we could, in a sense, from within, weaken that government. So we withdrew our support psychologically as well as practically. And frankly, the government did find that extremely threatening because they couldn't just write us off. You know, we were from within that own community. So the End Conscription campaign was able to, in a sense, make people think, because they were already a little bit uncomfortable about why things were happening and what was the whole system that we were involved with. And we did that through very creative means like music concerts, theatre, protest stands, pamphlets, posters, t-shirts, constantly getting people to think, you know, why are you being conscripted? What are you being expected to do? You can say no.
The formation of the South African Congress of Trade Unions saw the mobilization of workers and championed the cause of this exploited class. People like Koenig Ndlovu endeavored to awaken the workforce to see their oppression. Involved in the trade union front, Koenig began to unite and organize workers so that one day South Africa could be free of this kind of abuse.
When I was born, he was not around, he was in prison. So he just came in 1983. I was still young. My mother told me what was happening because I was not allowed to go to Robben Island. She used to go there, and then she will come and tell that your father is still alive.
Isikhathi esinzima kakhulu ngani. Ngoba nama special branch ayivakasha njalo nje. Hayi wayikhuluma nje kahle angimisi isibindi sokuthi hayi bazophuma. Angingaphatheki kabuhlungu ngoba bayayazi into babeyilwela.
Women too played a major role in the freedom struggle. Together with the husband, Chief Albert, Manu Kangelutuli was one of the stalwarts in the struggle for democracy. But her role, it highlighted the front that women presented against the apartheid regime. She championed the rights of women in society and emerged as a true township heroine in her own right.
She was active as well in Daughters of Africa, which was the forerunner to the ANC Women's League. And in fact, she was a one of the leading people in setting up the branch in Groudville. She also, during the campaign against the extension of pass laws to women, she was part of a delegation that went to see the Zulu king and to actually ask for intervention in an attempt to stop the government from forcing women to carry passes. And yes, certainly she was a leader within the community and was looked up to as such. Also within the church, I should mention this, that they played a leadership role in getting the women together and in attending to social problems in the area, families that didn't have food, that kind of thing. Through organizing women in the church, she was able to actually go around and give assistance.
However much years I've spent in Wales, in the short time that I've been here, I'm convinced that I still regard this as my home. I don't know how I would feel if I didn't see Kailicha, I didn't see the squatter camps in Pietermaritzburg. But when I see this, I do think that a lot more needs to be done here. And people must do something about it if they have any feeling about it. So that's my problem.
I feel extremely positive about South Africa. I'm very happy in general with where we are in South Africa, I must say.
Hayi bakundivele uyajabulele. Uyayithokozela manje mayisebona kanje nomelele. Ebona sekuhamba ngalendlela wayifisa ngayo.
Tonight, the Gandhi Development Trust, in conjunction with Satyagraha, acknowledge the sterling efforts of those who have courageously sacrificed in South Africa's fight for freedom. They have endured the constant scrutiny, the incarceration, and often brutal harassment, clinging only to the truth of their conscience, their integrity, and their vision to bring us all the democracy that we hold dear today. Theirs was a vision that saw beyond differences in color, caste, or creed. They saw into the spirit that unites us all as human, fighting our vices and championing virtue. It is indeed only by cherishing these values that South Africa's field of freedom can grow and blossom into its beautiful future.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our Honorable Maggie, Miss Maggie Govender, I'd like to invite you to come back to the stage. And I'd like to invite Miss Marilyn Atkin, who will come up and introduce our first awardee for the Satyagraha Awards.
Namaste. Good evening, Sunborn 9. Thank you for inviting me to introduce Nokukanya Luthuli. Nelson Mandela was the first person to honor Nokukanya Luthuli. It was in Durban in 1990, soon after his release. He called her the mother of the nation. Who was Nokukanya? Nokukanya Bengu's early life began at the Umgeni Mission Reserve, near where the Inanda Dam now lies, just up the road from Phoenix, where Gandhi lived. She went to school at Ohlange. Later, Nokukanya's husband, Albert Luthuli, was deeply influenced by Gandhi, and the Luthulis grew very close to members of the Natal Indian Congress. Nokukanya led the Stanger March to unban the ANC in 1989. She was pushed in her wheelchair by family friend Ghulam Suleiman. Why does Nokukanya Luthuli deserve to receive the Mahatma Gandhi Satyagraha Award? I will highlight two aspects of her life that were consistent with satyagraha. Nokanya had a thirst for knowledge. Her mother had aspirations that Nokanya, Mother of Light, would open the eyes of others through education. Tragically, her mother died when she was 10. At that young age, Nokanya was left to educate herself without any help from her father, who didn't believe that girls should be educated. She begged the principal of Inanda Seminary to allow her to do domestic work to pay for her schooling. Despite having little time to study, she still managed to top her class. She read widely throughout her life, from books on theology to agricultural handbooks, and was very well informed and up to date with the latest trends. She was one of the first in her community to have electricity and an electric stove. Secondly, Nokanya practiced food security many decades before the term was coined. Unlike educated people today, who regard working with the soil as something for amaqaba, for uneducated people, Nokanya developed the skills she had learned when she was a small child, working on her father's farm. She was in tune with nature. She knew that when the red-chested cuckoo, the pitme fro, starts calling in Zulu, "Pez gomkhon, pez gomkhon," literally, get your arms working. It is time to start preparing the fields to provide food and other needs for the family. In the months before her death in 1997, Nokanya, despite being bedridden, still felt the seasonal change. She called out repeatedly, "Leti gejalan, bring me my hoe." Nokanya was Lutuli's best friend, his mentor and advisor. Her success as a farmer freed Lutuli to concentrate on his political work. We congratulate the Gandhi Development Trust for honoring Nokanya Lutuli. We hope that others will follow your lead and perhaps establish a Nokanya Lutuli Institute for Organic Agriculture and Permaculture, where South Africans will learn to turn their patches of brown soil into green oases of food. I collaborated with a number of people in writing Nokanya's biography and had the privilege of sitting at her feet for several months. To find out more about this remarkable woman whose life spanned almost the whole of the 20th century, I urge you to buy a copy of the book that is on sale here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Atkin. I'm now going to call upon Dr. Albertina Lutuli, the eldest daughter of Ma Lutuli, to come up and receive this award. I'm going to ask Ms. Maggie Govender and Ms. Ila Gandhi to please do the presentation. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Dr. Albertina Lutuli to make a short speech. on the acceptance of this award.
I greet you all on this very wonderful evening here. Ngiyanibingelela nonke njengoba sihlangene kulobu busuku banamhlanjena obumnandi kangaka. I want to congratulate the Gandhi Development Trust who actually have made this wonderful event possible. I'm standing here really to say we're overwhelmed as the children of Nogukanya Lutuli that she has been recognized this evening in the way it has happened. For myself, I can say that the speaker, Marilyn, who touched just on some aspects of my mother, was the right person indeed to be asked to perform that task, because she got to be very close to my mother and she got to know her very well indeed. What she doesn't say is that the book Nogukanya was actually started, if I can say so, by some other people. My memory fails me who they were. And she came in because they began to sort of become lazy, if I can say so. And she came in with great enthusiasm and saw to it that the project of the book, Nogukanya, was brought to its completion. Like her, I would urge you all who are present here today to read that book. It depicts a woman who respected hard work. She believed in getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and finishing the day late, working hard. I think it is time in our own history that we look back to times like that and really begin to say, if God has given you 2 hands, 2 feet, and something in your head, you're not crazy, you're normal. You need to put that to use. Every one of us individually needs to understand that there's a task of building this country. Many years were spent really dissipating South Africa. And it is up to each one of us individually, and then together, as we say in my organization, the ANC, that together we can do more. But it starts with each individual. I stand here inspired for having been the daughter of a woman who really didn't spare a moment working. The ethos, the ethic of work has got to be revived in our nation. I know that my government helps a lot, to look after those who really have nothing, the poor, the poorest of the poor. But there are a lot of people who just loiter and look up to government to do everything for them. And I think that's not the way we are going to build the country that we live in, this beautiful country. This country which has got so much potential that it is recognized, the whole world, that South Africa has the potential to be one of the greatest countries in the world. With those words, I would like to say thank you again to the Gandhi Development Trust for the award that has been tonight awarded my late mother. I thank you.
Dr. Luthuli, I'd like you to stay on stage, please. I'd like to invite Ms. Jane Luthuli to also come up on stage. Ms. Jane Luthuli, if you could please come up to the stage. Could I ask all photographers to take pictures from the bottom of the stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite the State Attorney, Krish Govender, to please come up to the stage. Krish, I always like to say this about him. He's led an active activist's life, and he's going to introduce the next awardee in the Satyagraha Awards. So can I invite Krish Govender to come up on stage, please?
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. Sanmamani, good evening. Paul David is a compassionate, warm, passionate, committed, generous, big, happy, humorous, witty human being. I had to say that, Paul, because that's the, how can I say, the safety net to cover the million things that I won't be able to say about you. So I feel safe after having said that. We are honoring Paul today for his contribution to the non-racial sports struggle. But I would be failing all of you today if I didn't mention things that you already know about Paul, about his monumental contribution to the real big struggle in almost every aspect of our lives. His contribution to civic affairs, his contribution to politics and his role in politics, his work as a lawyer, as a true, committed people's lawyer, a community lawyer, a person who didn't accumulate vast amounts of money, if at all, any large amount of money, as a lawyer. He is one of those endangered species as a lawyer. And his work in politics was always brave and courageous. When he sought to highlight
the struggle during those dark days, during the emergency, and when he and others, I see Mewa Ramgovan in the audience as well, took refuge with people like George Siupasad, MJ Naidu, Archie Gumede, Baba Archie, in the British consulate in Durban. That was also just one small site of struggle for Paul and the kind of courage that went with everything that he did. And of course, all his civic work in the North Coast, from Verulam right up to Guadagusa. I don't think anybody in those areas would not know of Paul in everything he did, from housing to water, rates, all those struggles that affected the ordinary people. But it's important that the Gandhi Development Trust recognized the role that Paul played in the non-racial struggle. The non-racial struggle was really the sports struggle. The non-racial sports struggle was the soft underbelly of the struggle against apartheid and the struggle for freedom, the soft underbelly that affected the white people who loved their rugby, especially in South Africa, the most. It was worth $1 million bombs just to have one of those rugby tours cancelled. And they cried. And it hurt them badly. And there were a lot of courageous people in the non-racial sports struggle, which was under the banner of the South African Council on Sport, SACOS. And it was led by great people like the late M.N. Patha, the late Morgan Naidu, the late Hassan Hawa, and a host of other heroes and heroines in South Africa. And Paul ranks amongst them. He formed the Natal Council of Sport with a handful of others, and that was the provincial wing of the South African Council of Sport. He was also the president of the Natal Council of Sport. He did sterling work within SACOS. And SACOS was peculiar to, I would think, any other organization that was engaged in the struggle, because it brought together in different strands people from all the, I would call them liberation movements, as I think they were all part of that broad liberation family, from Abdusa, the Unity Movement, the Black Consciousness Movement, the PAC, the ANC, UDF, and all of them together worked in SACOS in a very unique way. There was a lot of tension, lots of arguments about non-collaboration, whether it was a principle or a strategy or a tactic. And Paul was amongst them that kept the strands of all these movements together in SACOS. Many of us, a bit younger than Paul, were possibly impatient at times, but Paul was able to work with everybody, all of them. And in SACOS, we never split along any ideological or even political lines. And it was through the type of personality that Paul always projected warmth. He engaged with people with wit. He was able to win them over, even if they disagreed, but they were able to accept that there was a need to stay united and work towards the common objective. Paul played sport as well, as you saw a little clip. He was a cricketer, footballer, and when he was involved in the non-racial struggle, he almost lost his life. Not throwing a bomb or planning to do something like that, but he helped to start the Natal Squash Rackets Federation. and he played squash. And in one of those fun games that he was having with his friend, the squash racket wielded by an opponent in a very amateurish way, unfortunately struck him in the eye, and he was hospitalized. And it wasn't an easy time because the injury was, although to the eye, it affected his blood pressure and the nerves, and he was critical at that time. But he survived that. So although he didn't give up his life, he did give up his eye, and I'm sure it didn't affect his foresight and insight into the struggles that he waged thereafter. He was strong as ever, and he was also a symbol to us for having come through all of that. He formed the Kwaduguza Golf Club in then Stanger. Now, for many of us involved in the non-racial sports struggle, we couldn't figure that out as well. But I don't know how he managed to ever swing a golf club. And if he did, he probably would have done it more in anger, but I didn't imagine him playing golf. But he did start that golf club. But it was a symbolic thing because it needed to be done. Golf was the preserve of the Gary players and the white golf associations that went around the world with impunity. And whereas you could tackle rugby and cricket and football, but golf was somehow able to escape, despite what happened to Papua. But Paul started, yes, a golf club. He was involved in squash, and he was a keen sports person in every respect. And I think a lot of it came from this big, happy family that he was part of, his brothers, his parents, all in that area were prominent people. I can go on, but we've got to get on to also hear a bit from Paul. So to Paul, we are very proud of you. You did us proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krish. And I'd like to invite Paul David to please come up onto the stage to receive an award from Ms. Maggie Govender and Ila Gandhi. Can you invite Paul David to give us his acceptance speech?
Thank you. All protocol observed. Thanks to Logi. I'm not a great believer in awards because I think it in some way distorts history by the people that you leave out in this category. For example, I've been nominated in sport, in the struggle of sport. And there have been thousands of people who have made very, very significant contributions. So I think that's my concern about the very principle or nature of awards. Thousands, literally, have made great sacrifices. They've suffered banning orders, economic deprivation, surveillance, tapped telephones, tampered posts, threats, and other repressive measures at the hands of our former security apparatus. And this award I would dedicate to all those people. And if you pardon me, I'm going to name a couple. Krish has already mentioned some of them, but this is my effort. Emin Patha, Morgan Naidu, George Singh, Hassan Hawa, Shan David, no relative of mine, R.K. Naidu, S.K. Naidu, Ramhuri Lachman, Charles Pillay, Reverend Sigamani, Matty Seegers, S.K. Chetty, Archie Hully, Rama Reddy, Vic Pillay, Harold Samuel, Jace Singh, Rabi Gobind, Monty Modley, Krish Govender, E.C. Mohammadi, his son Harun, Dori Rangasamy, Bobby Mishak Ankia, Danny Manikum, and countless others. And so I accept this award in a sort of representative capacity. I don't mean the Gandhi Development Trust any disrespect, but, and I'm not making this a caveat or a condition, but I accept this as a representative of that broad category of thousands of people who made very significant contributions to this pillar of struggle which sought to isolate the apartheid regime. And at a personal level, I'm so proud, firstly, of this award and the fact that I walked with those names that I mentioned and those countless others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul David, and I think that was an inspiring speech, and it was noble of him to remember the other people who participated in that with him. I'd like to now invite Rob Goldman to introduce our next awardee. Mr. Rob Goldman.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you tonight to Richard Steele. Now, when I was invited to do this task, it struck me there was just too much to say that I wanted to say about him. So I've taken the initiative of writing down my speech so that I keep within the narrow allocated time that I was given. I've had the privilege of being a friend of Richard's for 33 years. I might not look that old, but that's how long it's been. We met as first-year students at UCT in that tumultuous year, 1976. The student uprising was not confined to Soweto, and it impacted our white middle-class consciousness on the streets of Cape Town and via the New SAS organized demonstrations on our campus. Not only this, but the death of Steve Biko the following year, again followed by mass meetings and student demonstrations, and the much publicized and resisted demolition of the Crossroads squatter camp served to raise consciousness and awareness of the injustices of apartheid as never before. In the midst of this cauldron, Richard did some studying, pursued some romantic relationships, as is expected that students will do, played some baseball, which he learned while an exchange student in the USA. But more important, he grappled with the conundrum of how to live a life of integrity as a privileged white South African in this context which I've just described. And the agonizing question of what to do with his impending call-up to compulsory military service was exercising Richard's heart, mind, faith, and conscience. It was this call-up that gave Richard the opportunity to crystallize his thoughts and to define who he was and what he stood for. These experiences in his formative years led to the clarification and formation of a set of bedrock values, a way of being outworked in action and lifestyle, of pursuing principled respect for others, even the enemy, standing for the justice and dignity of others, and being a purveyor of life and healing to all. And so, after completing his studies, Richard, in true Gandhian style, refused to obey his call-up and respectfully surrendered himself to the military authorities, whereafter he was court-martialed and sentenced to a year in military jail, including spells of solitary confinement for refusing to wear military overalls. Thereafter, he worked full-time for the International Fellowship of Reconciliation, suffered detention without trial, and organized countless ECC actions. Richard has made this a consistent, lifelong vocation and continues this life-affirming work up to today, practicing as a doctor of homeopathy. And so it is my privilege and great pleasure to present to you Richard Steele and to come up and receive his award. Thank you.
We'd like to invite Richard Steele to please come up onto the stage. Richard, we'd like to invite you to make your acceptance speech.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your acknowledgement and support of my work as a peace and justice activist. And thank you for all your work over the years as peace and justice activists. And I join with all of you in calling for the unbanning of Aung San Suu Kyi and the implementation of democracy in Burma. I'm now self-employed, but I would like to thank my two previous employers who provided a base for me as an activist, the Phoenix Settlement Trust and the International Fellowship of Reconciliation. And also wish to acknowledge and thank my wife and co-activist, Anita Kronberg. Tonight, I'd like to share with you 3 slogans which helped me and formed my consciousness over the years. The first is, experiment with truth. This comes from the subtitle of Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with Truth. For him, it was not enough to simply believe in any particular truth. One had to experiment and test that truth through action in order to evaluate its validity and in order to adapt and personalize it so that it was suitable for context. A simple truth I grew up with was, love your neighbor. The biggest test of the validity of this truth for me was when I was called up to begin compulsory military service in January 1980. Was I prepared to act according to my conscience and not just speak according to it? I was. And aligning my values, beliefs, and actions through being a conscience objector was a powerful personal experience. In addition, the deliberate effort by myself and others to align that action with the broader movement to undermine apartheid and promote justice and peace was powerful too. This action by me and other imprisoned conscience objectors such as Anton Eberhardt, Peter Moll, Charles Yates, Mike Viveros, Neil Mitchell, Etienne Essery, Billy Paddock, Paul Dobson, Peter Hawthorne, Ivan Toms, David Bruce, and Saul Betzoffen contributed to the formation of the End Conscription campaign in 1984 and the eventual downfall of apartheid in 1994. The End Conscription campaign exploited the fact that the government depended on white solidarity and collaboration with enforcement of the status quo. We withdrew our physical support through refusing military service, but also withdrew our psychological support. In this way, we were like termites, white ants, causing structural damage and undermining the system from within, thereby making it easier for other forces inside and outside South Africa to make an impact. The second slogan is "Question Authority," attributed to Timothy Leary in the 1970s. It encourages questioning of all authorities and leaders, including those in the family, religious organizations, educational institutions, cultural organizations, political parties, and the government. No easy reliance on dogma, doctrine, or rules at face value. The flip side of this slogan is "Think for yourself." The very existence of the ECC was a challenge to authority. We constantly questioned the motives behind conscription and the deployment of military forces, and exposed state propaganda through research and the personal testimony of individuals who had previously been in the SADF. By 1990, 1/3 of conscripts were not reporting for duty when called up, an indication of how effective the ECC was in undermining the legitimacy of conscription and the government policy underlying it. I'd like to end with a new spin on an old slogan. The slogan is, "An injury to one is an injury to all." I interpret this now in the light of my knowledge of the human DNA. There is strong evidence from genetic data to claim that the origins of the human species lie here in Southern Africa. Furthermore, due to our common evolutionary origins, 99.9% of our genetic material is the same, no matter what our race or current geographical location is. Thus, when we injure another, we injure ourselves, because we are all sisters and brothers. Similarly, when we heal another, we heal ourselves. So let us here in South Africa and in Burma and everywhere live out this slogan: "A healing to one is a healing to all." I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Steele. I'd like to now invite Comrade Matthews Ngobo to please come up and introduce our next awardee. Comrade Matthews Ngobo.
Program Director, comrades, ladies and gentlemen. Here I want to briefly say something about one of those comrades who has enriched the history and the revolutionary struggle of our people here in South Africa. That is Comrade Koenig Mthakathi, the Wizard Ndlovu. Comrade Koenig Ndlovu is a comrade who has contributed a lot in the liberation struggle of this country. But I will just say or mention one or two things about him. It all started when the fascist nationalist government was isolated internationally. At the same time, when it realized that international economic boycotts was very strong internationally. And the South African apartheid government regime realized that the world and the earth was shrinking under its feet. It invited the investors, international investors, to come and invest here in South Africa at the expense of the working class, the workers who were exploited here inside the country. They came out with the policy of border industries, that those countries which want to come and invest here in South Africa, they must come and invest in rural areas. I can mention one or two of those industries which sprang up during that period. That was Hammersdale, which is called today Mpumalanga. The other industries that grew up or emerged in the rural areas was Esitebe. But what is more important is that the revolutionary struggle of South Africa, the comrades realized that the workers need to be educated about their rights. It was, their task was done at Lakani Chambers. At that time, that is the period where I really saw a Congress alliance alive in Lakani Chambers, because NIC, ANC, and SACTU shared the same offices on the third floor in Lakani Chambers. That was where where all the activities of our struggle emanated, because people like Moses Mapita, Stephen Dlamini, slave master, comrades like Billy Naya, their main task was to educate the workers here in Durban about their rights, how they can fight for their rights to improve working conditions so that they must earn better living conditions and also earn good wages, living wages. But when foreign investors came here in South Africa, there in Hammersdale, they opened up these industries. But because of the fact that the workers were educated and also revolutionary leadership of the Congress Alliance, revolutionary leadership of SACTU, when those factories were opened there at Hammersdale, they paid the workers miserable wages. They paid them next to nothing. People like Moses Mabhida, Comrade Billy Naya, Comrade Kenning Ndlovu, they organized the workers there to fight for their rights. When Comrade Mabhida left the country to go abroad and join the World Federation of Workers, Comrade Kenning Ndlovu and Billy Naya continued where he left off. They organized Hammersdale Industries. Comrades who were there during that time, they will remember about that famous Hammersdale industrial strike, which crippled the economy of the fascist regime of South Africa. At that time, the enemy realized that also the workers were very strong here in South Africa. Comrade Kenning will always be remembered about his contribution in the struggle for the people of South Africa and also for those who are helpless, the workers who earned almost nothing, the workers who sold their power, but in return, they didn't get anything. So the strike there opened the eyes and the ears of the South African people. And also the enemy realized that it cannot only keep on inviting foreign investors when the fire is burning here at home. There are many comrades who contributed in those days, but I have only concentrated on one comrade, and those comrades were our leaders in Lakani chambers in those days. I thank you very much, comrade, for listening. I thank you very much to be with you here this evening. I thank you very much for listening to what I've just said, briefly said here for Kenning Ndlovu. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Matthews. There's a wealth of history in all the people over here, and I'm sure if somebody is a good researcher, they just take down everybody's details. You could write books and books with everybody over here. We'd like to invite Mrs. Ndlovu to please come up on stage to receive the award. We'd like to call Ms. Ndlovu up as well.
I greet you all. On behalf of the Ndlovu family, I want to thank Gandhi Development Trust for this award. It means a lot to the family, to the Ndlovu family. I hope my father, where he is, he's happy. I know if he's around, he will say that, Nimfene nonke lana. I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ndlovu.